I'm going to reconvene the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. We had met for committee interviews at 5:15 and an executive session at 5:30. And so now our regular meeting will begin. Peter has mentioned that the meeting has been properly warned, so we are good to go. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from June 1st. I'm assuming everyone has a chance to read those meetings, and I would entertain a motion. Yes, Daniel.
I move to approve the minutes of June 1st.
Great. Daniel, the town clerk, has made a motion to...
I wish.
Oh, I'm sorry. The select board clerk to approve the minutes of June 1st. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. There we go. 5-0. The motion has carried. Chair's remarks. Having none, I'll ask the town manager if he has any comments.
I don't have any that are substantive to our business. I'll just apologize. As the select board knows from our executive session, I'm having some spotty internet at my house this evening. So there may be times when I shut off my camera because otherwise I might be disconnected. So sorry about that.
Very good. Are there select board members who have any comments to make or committee reports? Daniel?
Committee report. The Traffic Safety Committee is not meeting this week, so don't get up specially for our regular third Thursday 8 a.m. meeting. And select board comment, the Vermont vaccination campaign continues apace, and just because we got to 80% as a state does not mean we are done. In Brattleboro, during the next 7 days, there are a number of walk-in clinics. So tomorrow at the West Brat Fire Station, there is a clinic that, depending on which one you'd read on their website, it's either between 3 and 6 p.m. or 4 and 6 p.m. So the smartest thing to do would be to arrive at 4, I guess. And they are doing the Johnson & Johnson vaccine there. It is free. You do not need an appointment, and that vaccine is one shot and you are done. Then there's a clinic also at Green Street School that day between 2 and 6 p.m. doing the Pfizer vaccine, which is a 2-dose and is also the one that 12-year-olds plus can have. There's a clinic at the hospital on the 17th between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. doing Pfizer. There's another one at Green Street the following day. There's one at Outer Limits Health Club on Cotton Mill Hill doing Johnson & Johnson on the 19th between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And if you go to that one, you can get a 1-month free gym membership. And then I'm sorry that there are so many opportunities, but I just got to keep going because otherwise, you know.
Please do.
On the 22nd, which I guess is next week, at the Renter Center, which I think is vacant, on 499 Canal Street, between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., they're doing the Pfizer vaccine. And I think I saw somewhere that the first 50 people get a $5 Dunkin' Donuts gift card. And then there's another Pfizer clinic at the hospital on the 27th. And you don't have to memorize all of this stuff. You can go to the Health Vermont website and find a clinic near you. There's a link for walking clinics, and you just type in the name of the town and it'll show you all the ones that are available. That is like information that changes regularly. New clinics are being added all the time. So if you live in Brattleboro or the surrounding area and you want to get the COVID vaccine and you have not had a chance to do so yet, you can very easily do so. And I would encourage and implore you to do just that.
Oh, that's excellent information, Daniel. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Liz.
Any other select board members have a comment or report? All right, then. Oh, Daniel? Oh, Tim, raise that hand. Yes.
I just wanted to acknowledge and heck celebrate our governor has lifted things. And so we need to sort of acknowledge our victories and science that we've all embraced, and we're moving forward. And also, I just want, and we may be talking about this later, so I apologize, but just wanted to ask everyone's patience for town staff who now have to rapidly kind of ramp back up into a non-Zoom world. Looks like we have to get back to in-person meetings, whether we're quite ready for that or not. So I just ask everybody's patience while we figure out how that's going to apply to committees and to our own meeting. And it just might take a little while for everyone to get organized well for that stuff. So, but yay, Vermont. Thank you.
Yes, it's definitely, as the governor said, a credit to all of us and our sense of responsibility and caring for each other. So are there members of the public who would like to participate and bring up an item that is not on our agenda this evening? And I see no little hands. So let's move right along to the consent agenda. I would ask my fellow select board members to either call something out to be removed from the consent agenda or provide us a motion so that we can vote. Yes, Ian.
A motion if the board will hear it.
Great.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Ian has moved to approve the consent agenda as presented. And just a reminder that these 5 items, the information regarding them is in our informational packet that was sent to all of us and is on our website. So all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, that is passed 5-0. Thank you very much. Now, I will entertain a motion to convene as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
I move that we convene as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
Thank you, Jess. Jess has moved that we convene as Water and Sewer Commissioners. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, that also passes 5-0. So we are now Water and Sewer Commissioners. And I would like to introduce Peter Elwell to discuss this COVID-19 matter.
Thank you. So tonight we're asking you to consider giving notice of a future elimination, not to summarily and immediately resume water disconnections, but to let water customers know that the town intends to do that 2 billing cycles from now. We think it's important that you consider this for the same reason that we talked about it last summer. The numbers are presented in the memorandum dated June 10th from me to you that's in the backup materials. We share the concern that you have expressed and that we know is a very real thing out in the community and in society, that the impacts of COVID-19 on households have been differential, and that there are some households have been really severely and negatively impacted by this, and that some of the additional amount that is owed and the additional number of households that are in arrears is likely reflecting the degree to which the pandemic has impacted individual households. I'm not an expert. I know Daniel is more expert, and there are others in the programs that are available to help people pay these bills. So I think that's one thing that's important to consider, is that there are such programs available. The thing that I have a stronger, clearer perspective on, being responsible with my town teammates for the operation of the town's utility, is that some part of this group of accounts that is in arrears represents folks who chronically fall behind, even in good times, even in when we haven't had the pandemic. There are certain households that often run late. And then as we approach a time when the potential of their water being shut off becomes real, they make a payment to the town. And we also are in a position where we believe we can be helpful directly outside other than just those relief programs or the support programs that exist to help pay these bills. We've had a longstanding practice in the town of setting up payment plans with people. But the longer that we let this go and the farther behind people fall, the harder it will be for them to actually keep up with the payment plan if that's the route they take to get back on top of these bills. So unfortunately, while there's an element of this that feels insufficiently compassionate to the households that have suffered and have fallen further behind than usual, it is nonetheless true that there needs to be a time when the moratorium ends. And we believe the time for you to declare that is now, with 2 billing cycles advance notice. So we would put out information with this next bill that would inform people that people who are behind after the November deadline will be subject to shut off. And we'll have information about get help paying their bills and how they can get a payment plan set up with the town. So there's months of advance notice, but the decision we're asking you to make tonight is that we do send out those notices with this next set of bills, and we do resume the shut off program after the November bills, and put the operation of the utility system, back in its normal procedures.
I would assume, Peter, that this would also serve as a prompt for people who do need help to reach out.
That's our intent, that for folks who have just let the account slip into arrears, that this is the prompt to pay. And for folks who have not been able to pay and are not able to pay, that they either follow the route into these programs that provide assistance paying and or set up a payment plan with us so that they can get back on top of it.
Very good. Do select board members have comments? Daniel.
Thanks. I think that this is a reasonable thing to do. I've also, for the last several years, I've worked with Sevka, and a lot of the work that I've done is around responding to electricity shutoffs. And so I can tell you, like, my historical experience is that receiving a shutoff notice is a spur to action. And in my experience, the shutoff notices that I've worked with always end in them being, the action is taken with, like, Sevka and the household to prevent shutoff. In some cases, people do get shut off. And then what happened last year, in March, was that shutoff notices for electric were suspended, and they're actually currently suspended until the end of this month. And now that the state of emergency is due to expire, that will end. So the town's decision to wait until November to issue shutoffs will happen months after electricity and other shutoff notices are able to be issued. So I feel like we are being very considerate of the ratepayers, challenges to pay. And I can tell you that, having a moratorium in place has left many, many, many families with bills that are way larger than they can handle because they weren't getting a shutoff notice to prompt into action. So, like, Peter has kind of mentioned that there's like 2 categories, right? There's those that are just going to wait until they get the notice before they pay. And there's those that actually, really can't pay. And you can't really find out who's in which situation until there's something that has some teeth to it that lands in the mail. And that's pretty rough. That's a tough thing to say, but that is kind of how it works. There are two programs that can help people specifically with utility arrears right now. There's one that is aimed at renters, which most likely won't help too many people with water and sewer bills, because mostly people with water and sewer bills are homeowners. And then the water and sewer arrears, folks who have water and sewer arrears and are concerned about how to pay them, I would really encourage them to reach out to Wyndham and Windsor Housing, even if they're not somebody that's directly connected with Wyndham and Windsor Housing, because Wyndham and Windsor Housing is our region's home ownership center. And they have access to funds to help homeowners manage with this kind of, arrear. And then after they've reached out to Wyndham and Windsor, if there is still an issue, they should get in touch with SEVCA, and we have funds to help people. But I think this is the right thing to do. I also learned in having a brief email conversation with Chris Campany at Wyndham Regional that I don't think any other municipalities did this. I don't think that they actively chose to prevent water and sewer disconnections. Many municipalities around here don't have a municipal water and sewer system, but those that do, I don't believe, based on Chris's response, that they instituted a moratorium. So, whilst it might feel rough for us to end it, many other places never even started it. So I think this is, an okay thing for us to do. And I think that giving it 2 billing cycles is ample time. And I would really encourage people who are feeling anxious about it to reach out sooner rather than later. And there will be compassionate, non-judgmental people available in the community to support you.
Well, thank you for all that information, Daniel. Tim?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I'll sort of echo that and say that I think this is the time to do this. It's 5 months before any shutoffs might possibly occur. And as Peter pointed out, it's the way to catch them with this billing cycle. My only question is, and obviously it's very late to be asking this, but is there any way to have an insert in the next billing that goes out to anyone who has the, whatever it's going to be, a yellow sheet, a warning? Can any resources be included on that?
That's exactly the intent. When we've been talking about it as being, advance notice that this will happen, starting in November. Yeah. The intent is to put insert information into the bills that are going to go out shortly.
Perfect.
It'll be due in August, to be really clear, both about the procedural change and about the way in which people can get assistance in getting caught up.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments? Okay. Are there members of the public who would like to speak to this issue? I see none. Would anyone like to make a motion? Tim,
Make a motion.
please.
I'll motion to authorize staff to resume disconnection of water service for delinquent utility accounts following the November 15th payment deadline, with a notice to all customers included in the bills that will be mailed soon for payment by the July 15th deadline.
Thank you, Tim. Tim has made a motion to authorize the staff to resume disconnection of water service for delinquent utility accounts following the November 15th payment deadline, with a notice for all customers included in the bills that will be mailed soon for payment by the July 15th deadline. All in favor of this motion, select board members, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 And there we are, 5-0. The motion has passed. Thank you. Now, the next water and sewer matter is the financing of Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Facility Replacement Project. And I would like Patrick Moreland to speak on this issue, please. Hello, Patrick.
Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Good.
So we've got some really good information, some good news for the board and for the public this evening. And that involves the financing opportunities for the new water treatment plant. So I'm confident that the board and most of the public will remember we've got a aging water treatment facility up at Pleasant Valley, which is more than 10 years past its usable life. We talked about this extensively at representative town meeting earlier this year. At that meeting, the town was given authorization to proceed with the project, which is now just getting underway. But at that time, we had to make some assumptions about the financing that have recently become clear, and that's what I'm here this evening to discuss with you. At the time, we were given authorization to borrow up to $12.5 million at an interest rate not to exceed 5%. There was some expectation that we would likely do much better than that in terms of interest rate, and that there might be something that the state calls subsidy, which is more or less a grant to provide to a project such as this. We now have the details of that, which is pretty exciting. We also have a much clearer idea of what the project is actually going to cost, given that at your last meeting on June 1st, the town awarded a contract to Kingsbury for the construction. So we now know what we anticipate to be the final project cost, which, as you can see from the memo, is at about $14.2 million. The great news is not on the overall cost so much as the financing. I'd like to explain just a little bit about how these types of projects are financed. We've been given an offer of a loan. The paperwork has been included in the board packet for $5,930,000. That sum is to cover the cost of final design and for the first year of construction. The interest rate for that loan is 0%, not 2, 3, 4, or up to 5. It's 0%. And the really nice thing is this project, we don't know exactly how long it's going to take. It could take 2 years. It might roll into 3. At each year, we're going to draw down additional funds. Each of those subsequent drawdowns are also going to be at 0%. At the conclusion of the project, all 2 or 3 of these loans, however many it turns out to be, will be rolled up into one final loan, and that loan will also be at 0%. So there is no cost that the ratepayers are going to have to bear to borrow the funds to make this project happen. In addition to that, we now know the subsidy or the grant, which is going to be available to ratepayers for this first tranche of money. As I mentioned just a moment ago, it's $5.930 million. And the subsidy offered to the town is $4,144,232. What this means is of the $5,930,000, which is being loaned to the town, we only need to repay $1,785,000. That's tremendous. It's really better than we anticipated, and it's just nothing but a win for the ratepayers in Brattleboro. Now, each year that we need to draw down additional funds, there is the potential for subsidy, but just as we discussed back in March, we don't know for sure what that's going to be until such time as the loan is processed and we bring it to you. But what we can say about the overall project, what we can say with certainty today is that we can absolutely assure you that we will not need the full $12.5 million. In the second page, there's a little table that we put together. It shows that with a $14.2 million project, with $5.9 million borrowed, there's only $8.2 million worth of project left. However, given the substantial subsidy, we have borrowing capacity well in excess of $10.5 million. So we're not going to come close to the full 12.5. And as we said just a moment ago, the interest rate will, for the entire life of this loan, be 0%. So this is just really good news. Even if any of the future borrowing doesn't receive any subsidy, we're going to have more than enough capacity here. But the reality is we anticipate subsidy each year, maybe not quite as good as this year, but it's reasonable to expect that we would get some sort of subsidy in future years, meaning that this is going to be a very successful project for the town of Brattleboro and a very successful financing package for the ratepayers. Oh, one final thing, the paperwork that's been put before you, the loan agreement has all been drafted by the state. It's been reviewed by bond counsel. It's been reviewed by Bob Fisher, town's general counsel. It's been reviewed by myself, Steve Barrett, Chrissy Haskins, the whole team. And I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Well, I don't have a question, but nobody can argue with approximately 70% grant. So good for us. And thank you. Anyone have other comments? Yes, Ian.
It's great news. Thank you, Patrick, for explaining that so clearly and so fully. Yeah, worst case scenario, we can still fully fund it, and we expect to hopefully get grants in the years to come. You think that one of the reasons why the grant was so large this year was because of COVID?
I think that's reasonable. I think the state of Vermont does an especially good job of when there are large federal funds that become available for making sure they get put to good use. And so there is a good deal more subsidy in this package than we anticipated. And that very likely stems from some recent influx of federal funds, but I couldn't say for sure.
Daniel.
Thanks. The other year we set the rates for water and sewer. We do that for a 5-year period?
Yes, sir, 5 years.
Is this lower borrowing likely to lead to lower water and sewer rates at the next rate setting? Or could those rates be revisited based on this lower borrowing?
I think that's entirely up to the water and sewer commissioners. While we generally set the rates for a 5-year period, we do each year take a look at them and see. What I'm sure you are recognizing is that when we put those recommendations together and when we built that model, we were assuming a larger payment. And so, this is fortuitous and welcome, obviously. As to whether or not you choose to make an adjustment to the rates is within your purview for sure. And we'll have another utility fund budget little ways out, but certainly we could take a look at that whenever you're ready.
Yep. I would like that.
I like your thinking, Daniel.
Thanks.
All right. Are there any more select board members who would like to comment? Or I will open it up to the public to see if any members of the public wish to comment. And I don't see any little hands. So I'm happy to entertain a motion that one of my fellow water and sewer commissioners would like to make.
I can make a motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve the loan agreement, including Exhibits A through D, with the Vermont State Revolving Loan Fund administered by the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank in the amount of $5,930,000 for the Brattleboro Water Treatment Facility Improvement Project, and to authorize Select Board Chair Elizabeth McLaughlin to sign the loan agreement and any other documents necessary to execute the loan on behalf of the town.
All right, thank you, Ian. Ian has made a motion to approve the loan agreement, including Exhibits A through D, with the Vermont State Revolving Loan Fund administered by the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank in the amount of $5,930,000 for the Brattleboro Water Treatment Facility Improvement Project and to authorize Select Board Chair Elizabeth McLaughlin, myself, to sign the loan agreement and any other documents necessary to execute the loan on behalf of the town. All in favor of this motion, Select Board members, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, 5-0, that motion has carried. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank
And-
you.
And on to the next item, which Patrick will also explain for us.
Excellent, thank you. So Tri-Park, the folks who manage and own Tri-Park, because it's a cooperative, they are owners, have been engaged in a master planning process for the last couple of years to try and help them chart a course towards sustainability and to ensure that they're operating as effectively and efficiently and they have all the capital needs addressed that they can. Our very own Sue Fillion, the planning director, has been actively engaged with that process throughout. And so the town has been a key part of helping this process to move forward. One of the things that master planning effort has identified is that Tri-Park has more debt than they really need, and what they need to be able to do is free up some cash. I'll let somebody in here. There we go. And so they've been very clear about that, and they've been very open and upfront with it. They've shared it with the state legislative delegation and with the state Department of Environmental Conservation that administers the state revolving fund. And so a plan was hatched and is before you tonight to assist Tri-Park. And the reason that the town of Brattleboro is involved, as you may recall, is that a number of years ago, I believe it was in 2007, the town of Brattleboro floated a bond to do the water and sewer improvements at Mountain Home Park, which is one of the component, in fact, the largest component parks for Tri-Park. And so they had a series of water and sewer related improvements that were that needed financing. And so the town stepped in and secured financing for those improvements. And each year, you'll notice at representative town meeting, there is an article whereby the town, through the use of a special assessment district, raises a particular sum of money from the folks at Mountain Home. And that is how Mountain Home generates the loan payment revenue. They provide that to the town turns around and passes that on to the state. And so we are in effect in a middle position between the state and Tri-Park for their water and utility improvement loans. And so that's kind of why we're involved here. The really nice thing is that the state has been able to offer a fairly significant restructuring of Tri-Park's debt, both to the two loans that town of Brattleboro is on the hook for, and also to one additional loan that the state has made directly to the folks at Tri-Park. And the reason we're showing you all three in the chart on the top of page 2 is just so that you can have a clear understanding of the impact that this overall package is going to have for the folks at Tri-Park. There's two different things that are happening. One is debt forgiveness, which is always welcome. And that occurs to one of the loans that passes through the town. Its principal value is going to be reduced by $246,000. And in addition to the loan that does not involve the town, there's going to be $66,000 in loan forgiveness for a total of over $300,000 in loan forgiveness. So that's going to benefit them in a very obvious way. The second thing which is going on here is that each of the three loans is having their term extended by 10 years. And what that will do is lower the overall monthly payment that the residents of Mountain Home need to come up with. And so what that's going to do is generate a beneficial cash flow for Tri-Park to the tune of about $100,000 a year. And that's money that they're going to free up. They're going to be able to apply towards other capital needs, retire other debt, How they choose to use it is obviously going to be up to them, but improved cash flow of $100,000 a year is, I'm sure, a very welcome turnout. And what this means going forward is that the number, which has stayed the same each year, I think it's something like $236,000 that the town needs to collect from Tri-Park, is going to go down to about $135,000. This is a pretty much a win-win. It's something that the folks at Tri-Park are excited about. I believe the state is excited about it. What needed to happen was we needed to consult with the town's bond counsel, a gentleman named Paul Giuliani. And Paul Giuliani needed to be able to let the bond bank and the state revolving loan fund know that, yes, this was, in his expert opinion, consistent with the bond vote that was taken by the Brattleboro voters in 2007. He has reviewed this. He is wholly supportive of this. He has put together this package of documents for you to approve this evening, including a refunding resolution and certificate and a tax certificate and a whole series of other documents. These were once again prepared by bond counsel Giuliani, reviewed by Bob Fisher, myself, Peter, Steve Barrett, Chrissy Haskins, and everybody. Actually, not Chrissy Haskins in this instance, but this package has been reviewed and is ready for your approval, and it has staff's full support.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And that's great. And I just recall just several meetings ago that we heard from Tri-Park and understood how important Tri-Park is to the Brattleboro community. I think it holds approximately 8% of the town's population. And so what's good for Tri-Park is good for the town as well. And I think we were all looking for ways that to help Tri-Park, and lo and behold, the state of Vermont has found a way. So this is good. Are there any other select board members who would like to comment? Jessica.
It's always thrilling when you can see something go from a master plan to reality. I'm really excited that this is part of a bigger picture journey, and that this is a great way to support housing in Brattleboro that is affordable, that houses a lot of our population, and that is privately owned. So I'm loving this.
Ian.
Patrick, do you have the numbers on what the monthly difference will be for our Tri-Park residents?
I don't, Ian. We have, in effect, one customer out there, that being Tri-Park, and exactly how that's apportioned amongst the individual residents is a matter, is an internal matter for them. So I sorry about that. I couldn't give you a clear, direct answer.
Okay.
Hey, baby. You good?
Sounds like the dog might have an answer. No,
I think
If
you'd
you'd
be
like to hear
barking up
from
the
her,
wrong
I
tree,
could.
Tim. Yeah.
I threw that softball up for you, Liz. You just
Thank
you
you.
hit it out of the park.
Daniel.
Patrick, I really appreciate the way you presented this, because I have to confess that when reading it, it took me a couple of goes round to wrap my head around all the ins and outs. But you know, what I like to hear is debt forgiveness. I like to hear increased cash flow. I like to hear the increased likelihood of sustainable situation for the folks at Tri-Park. And as my fellow board members have already pointed out, you know, and as was pointed out to us by the Tri-Park board and by Sue in presentation, you know, a little while back, this is a substantial chunk of Brattleboro's populace. So doing right by them is exactly the right thing to do.
Well said.
All right. Any other select board members like to comment? Or before I open it up to the public? Are there any members of the public who would wish to speak on this topic? I'll give a few minutes for some hands to go up? And seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
Sure, I'll make
Yes.
one.
Thank you, Jess.
I'm gonna make a motion to adopt the refunding resolution and certificate and tax certificate, including schedules A through E, with the Vermont State Revolving Loan Fund administered by the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, and to authorize town manager Elwell to execute any other documents necessary to perform the restructuring as presented.
Thank you, Jessica. Jessica's made a motion to adopt the refunding resolution and certificate and tax certificate, including schedules A through E, with the Vermont State Revolving Loan Fund administered by the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, and to authorize town manager Elwell to execute any other documents necessary to perform the restructuring as presented. All in favor of this motion, select board members, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And the motion has carried 5-0. And so I will entertain another motion
Ooh,
to, yes, Jessica?
I'd like to move that we adjourn or deconvene as water and sewer commissioners.
Great. Jessica has motion to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners. All select board members in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, carried 5-0. Now, unfinished business. Let's see. COVID-19, whether we were having hybrid select board meetings in person and online, whether we should. Well, the governor has clarified that situation for us. Peter, would you like to speak to it?
Sure. Yes, I think this discussion will be substantially quicker and easier tonight based on the governor's action this week. So the state of emergency declared by the governor last year expires at midnight tonight. We were actually fortunate in the holding of this meeting that we were able to hold it in the manner that it had been warned. There are other meetings here in Brattleboro, as well as select boards across the state who have meetings later this week where the warning said it was going to be an online meeting, but now they actually have to, make the adjustments necessary to be able to immediately, starting tomorrow, have in person, what the state referred to as a physical location. We've been allowed under the declaration of emergency to hold meetings where the location was electronic rather than a physical location. That expires at midnight tonight. And so the next meeting of the Brattleboro Select Board, the next regular meeting with all the public business being done is going to be on July 6th. And that meeting, we will be back in the Select Board meeting room. The public will also be allowed back into the Select Board meeting room. And Patrick and BCTV have been working together on the logistics of making sure that members of the public who wish to come in, and for the occasional time when a select board member or a staff member might need to come in electronically, but particularly for the convenience of the public, that there will be a Zoom component to these meetings going forward. So the select board and I and some other staff and any members of the public who wish to be together in the select board meeting room will be there in the manner that we used to meet until March 17th of 2020. And this format will be available for those who choose to come into the meeting this way. It will be a little bumpy. A couple of you said during comments earlier in the meeting, give us a little time. We're going to have to kind of get our legs under us in terms of the new combined system. I think that's true. The primary challenge will be for the chair in managing how you call on people in the room and also call on people in the Zoom format. And I'm sure that, in a relatively short period of time, that'll become comfortable and the new way of doing things. But there will be a transitional period that we'll have to kind of get into that. It also was mentioned during the earlier select board comments period that this is going to affect the other public bodies of the town, the boards and the committees of the town. That's true. And that will happen also immediately. So every other appointed body of the town that has been meeting on Zoom or GoToMeeting will now be meeting in a physical location again. And all the future warnings that go out for these meetings will specify a physical location. And those entities will decide for themselves, unless you as a board provide direction. But I think we should allow them, at least initially, to be deciding for themselves whether they have a hybrid arrangement or whether they are just in person. For many of the smaller committees where there's not a lot of public engagement, it will be cumbersome and possibly costly to set up a dual system, because it will have to be managed. And Patrick and BCTV could speak better to the logistics of that. That is obviously a need and well worth it for these select board meetings. BCTV is already a partner to us in these select board meetings and for certain other bodies of the town. But most of our volunteer citizen bodies are not televised, have not historically been televised. And for them, it's going to be, I think, more challenging to do a hybrid format rather than go back to just the full in-person meetings.
Well, thank you, Peter. I'm up for the challenge. I appreciate everyone's support because, the only constant, especially with COVID, is change. So do we want to discuss this? Is there anything to discuss? It seems, yes, Ian.
Not really anything to discuss, but I just want to take a moment to thank Patrick and BCTV and everybody else who's been working on getting the hybrid model set up. I think it's critical to having it be hybrid moving forward. We've just seen the opportunity for people to participate in their local government in a way that we haven't seen before, thanks to the remote option. So I'm excited for what opportunities this is going to present in the future and the kind of participation we're going to get. And I know it'll probably be a little bumpy for us all. And Liz, I really appreciate, I know you're going to be able to do a great job with it as chair. But we'll get there, and I'm sure we'll get it running just as smooth as these meetings have been.
Thank you, Ian. Daniel.
Yeah, just building on that, actually, I mean, I want to thank BCTV and Patrick and the interpreter team for not only the moving forward plan, but also all that went before. Since last March, was it March?
17th.
Whatever. Good grief. Everybody moved really quickly. Well, I say everybody other than us. We just, sat upstairs and spoke on screens. But, the amount of work that went into making these meetings happen and making them accessible for everybody. And I think also, shout out to town staff for their nimble website updating as well, because, this is just a meeting that we show up at. We don't need to, Liz runs it or whoever is chair runs it, but we just have to turn up, and for it to happen actually takes people and work and labor outside of here that is not really well observed by most. So I know Nolan, I think, was on here tonight, and I'm sure that other people could be named as well, but I've only got Nolan at the tip of my tongue. I see Ray on the screen. Thank you, Ray. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it just bears thanking. And I think the media and their continued presence in these meetings has been important, especially with the fact that much of what has been discussed in these meetings has been really important to communicate out into the world. And so thank you for those folks for their continued watchfulness.
Are there any others? Tim, yes.
A little jealous, Liz, because I never got to be a normal in-person chair. But I do know that you'll be able to handle it. We'll figure out the queue, the stack, whether it's an in-person stack or online. And
Well, you have to admit, Tim, it was very appropriate for the videographer to be on Zoom.
yes, and yeah, it was quite a year, and I'm glad you get to experience the transitional part. That I'm not jealous of. I have to just go out and buy some pants. I don't know if everyone else feels the same way, but I don't think I'm up to speed on that. So
Yeah, I think we all have to wrestle with the fact of a physical location.
Yep.
Anyone else? All right. Gary, would you like to say a few words?
I like to say we are back, people. Back. It is showtime. We're going back to the select board meetings. I guess the question I wanted to ask Peter, since the town is open, we do have a lot of committee meetings that happen at the library. That being said, I don't know, is Star, are we going to be able to meet there at certain committees at the library as well? Are they aware of that? I mean, I don't know how her protocol is set up there, but I guess that's a question that I need to find out as well, too.
So we'll be going over tomorrow, the management team and I, the finer details of the full reopening of town facilities. But as you know, the library's already been becoming more and more open. We intend next Monday to reopen the municipal center as normal. So from 8:30 to 5, anybody who wants to come in will be able to come in. We're going to be working out some details about some additional or continued precautions that we'll be taking, but they'll be pretty minimal going forward. And so we'll have more to say about that at the end of the week. I do expect this coming Friday will be the last time. I knock wood on that and hope that there won't be a time in the future when they need to resume. One thing we all need to be, Daniel talked about the importance of people who haven't been vaccinated going out and getting vaccinated.
Right.
That continues to be true, and all of us continuing to be smart, not as extremely cautious as we've had to be this past year, but still smart and careful about things because there is still COVID all around us. And there are strains that people are worried could cause surges in the future. And if that does happen, there may be a new state of emergency. There may be new, severe restrictions that have to be put back in place. So we'll all hope that doesn't happen because right now we are heading in the other better direction. The expectation is that the COVID update I put out on Friday will be the final weekly update, and it will include the details about the more complete reopening of the town's facilities.
And about what a capacity that you'll be able to do in the town when we have the meetings.
There is no limit on capacity any longer.
Okay.
The meetings that are going to be held in public spaces are going to be held in public spaces now, like they were before COVID.
Oh, okay. So the good thing, well, the good positive thing with Park and Recs, we're meeting outdoors. So it's a good thing being on that committee, but that's a good news I like to hear. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys, and I'm really psyched. I'm very happy, and I can't wait to see that happen.
All right. Thank you, Gary. So I think the gist of our conversation is that our next regularly scheduled meeting is July 6th, and it will be in person and also electronic. Do we need a motion to that effect, Peter?
You do not.
All right, very well. The next item is new business, and I would like to introduce Sue Fillion to come on and tell us about the proposed amendments to land use regulations and to convene ourselves as a public hearing. So Sue, welcome.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. I also want to let you know that we have a couple of the planning commissioners here as well. Tom Mozakowski, who is the chair, is in the meeting. Gary Stroud and Dan Handy are also here. So and then various members of the select board have been on the planning commission as we've gone through some of these amendments over the years. So yeah, we're here for tonight for a public hearing on some proposed zoning amendments. They cover a wide, a bunch of different sections in our land use regulations. So I thought that we could start it off with a presentation for you so you understand what the regulations are that we're proposing and a little bit behind them, a little bit of information behind them. Basically, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 7th on these proposed amendments. That's part of the process. It's the Planning Commission holds a hearing, and then because of the size of Brattleboro, the select board has to hold 2 public hearings.
So let me just ask, have we followed the proper process to have a public, this would be a public hearing? Is there anything?
Yes, it has been warned appropriately. It was, there was a 15-day requirement to warn it in the newspaper of record. So it was in the Brattleboro Reformer on May 29th.
Thank you.
So why don't, if it's okay with you, I'm going to share my screen and
yes, please.
do a little presentation.
Great.
All right, so our land use regulations were adopted in 2015, and we've been working with them for about 5.5 years at this point. And over the years, we've come up with some amendments that we'd like to propose. And they're based on, some of it has to do with changes to state and federal law. Some were with joint meetings that the Planning Commission and the Development Review Board had, and understanding where the Development Review Board had some tweaks that they wanted to see. The Planning Commission itself undertook some review, particularly in regards to housing and a couple of other areas. Staff had some suggestions from working with it. And then the other thing that we're hoping to do is to make the interim zoning regulations that the select board passed in September about housing permanent. Interim zoning is good for 2 years. We've been working with it for over 6 months now, and it's been effective, and we've not had any issues. So we'd like to make that a permanent change at this time. So the amendments that we have to part 1 of our land use regulations, these are ones that come from state law. There had been statutory tweaks over the years, changing words from like accepted to required. And then a one for group homes where you used to be able to have as a conditional use a group home if it was located within 1,000 feet of another one. It could be considered a conditional use. The state statute did away with the distance, and so a group home is a permitted use anywhere there's a single family home in any district. So these 2 amendments are simply to come into compliance or in the same wording that the state statute has. And we've been, even though we hadn't made this change over the years, we would still be required to follow state statute. So there's no issues with that. Now we're into part 2, which deals with our zoning districts. So this here is the amendments that we're proposing to make the allowing higher density housing in a bunch of the zoning districts more permanent. So again, this was adopted by the select board in September of 2020. The purpose is to improve housing access and affordability in areas of Brattleboro where we have water and sewer, and we are looking to direct housing. So if you look at the map on the screen, it is basically all of the areas except the 2 green colors. The dark green is our rural zoning district. The lighter green, where my cursor is, if you can see that, that's the rural residential zoning district. The purple is the industrial zoning district, and this light blue is the waterfront zoning district. Those are the 4 districts where we're not proposing that these regulations wouldn't apply to. And basically what we're doing in it is there is a dwelling unit per acre density standard in these districts for residential uses. And so in all of those other districts, we want to remove that and let the other standards that we have control the number of units. Also in the residential neighborhood zoning district, which is yellow on this map, this is where most of our residential neighborhoods are. We want to make 3-unit, 4-unit, and 5-unit. If it's in an existing building, only the 5 units is in the existing building. We want to make them permitted uses in the zoning district. And then if it's a 5-unit building in a new construction, then we would make that conditional use. Right now, all of those are conditional use, and it just adds another layer of review and expense for housing development. So these are what we're proposing for the permanent changes. Other changes to part 2, we found kind of a goof in the service center zoning district. It talks about a service center zoning district on Canal Street. That is something at one point we had considered, but we never adopted. And so we just want to make that fix and get rid of the reference to Canal Street there. We have maximum building footprints in each of the zoning districts. Currently in our mixed use district, which I'll flip back to on this map, probably can't see it too well. It's the orange color. So we have a mixed use zoning district. Basically it's Frost Street, Bird Street, up Canal Street. After you're out of the downtown, it's Canal to Bird Street area. And then there's some of South Main Street and the neighborhoods back there are in the mixed use zoning district. Currently, the maximum building footprint is 4,000 square feet. We're proposing that it move to 6,000 square feet. When we did the land use regulations, 4,000 what it does is preserves the existing pattern, but doesn't really allow for much growth. So we think that there's a little bit of room to allow larger buildings in that zoning district. Another proposed change would be to currently surface parking lots and parking garages are permitted uses in the service center zoning district. So the service center zoning district is kind of the Hannaford's Plaza. It's Putney Road, basically from Royal Plaza, which is where Staples is, all the way up to north of the roundabout. And so we want to make surface parking and parking garages as conditional uses. That way they can be reviewed to make sure we're just not creating parking lots for without a good reason for it. And then the third change in this part 2 of the land use regulations would be to add a rooming or a boarding house as a conditional use in the residential neighborhood zoning district. So this allows more types of housing in the residential neighborhood. Currently, it's a pretty limited area that we allow rooming or boarding houses, and we know there's a need for housing. So we'd like to have it as a conditional use. So then there's a series of changes that we're proposing for part 3, which is in our land use regulations. Part 3 gets into the development standards that apply to development. So there's a series of proposed sign changes. Some of them are, we have sign zones, and then there's different size signs that are allowed in the different zones. We want to move the mixed use zoning district into sign zone 1. The other districts that are in zone 1 is the urban center, it's the neighborhood center, it's the village center. So these are all very walkable areas with sidewalks where we're trying to encourage buildings that are closer to the road. And so we think that by moving the mixed use zoning district into that zone, we're having more appropriately sized signs for the walking public. It's not really designed for larger signs that are for the driving public. We also want to permit vertical blade signs. If you're familiar with Insight photography, they have kind of a vertical sign rather than horizontal. We had a drawing of it in the land use regulations, but we actually didn't have, the text really didn't meet the what was trying to be achieved there. So vertical blade signs would, there's some text to clarify the size and how they would be measured. And then we also want to clarify where portable signs may be located if the business is down an alley. So again, this is Insight Photography is a good example. They're in the Mitchell Giddings building. It's all one building. They're in the back down an alley. And so under the way that the regulations are written now, they couldn't have a sign that was out on the sidewalk because it would be more than 12 feet from the entrance to the to their unit. So we're just kind of clarifying that so that those businesses can have portable signs as long as they're not obstructing the sidewalk. Sorry, in the text here, we have what we're seeing here is an attempt. There was a federal case, which was Reed versus Gilbert, Arizona. And that was a federal Supreme Court case. And it was determined that municipalities couldn't regulate based on content. They couldn't regulate non-commercial signs based on content. And the case involved a church and their signage needs. But basically what came out of it is that you can't really, if you need to read the sign to determine what regulations apply, then you can't do that. So what we've done is create temporary signs, and all of them fall within a certain size that can be allowed. So whether it's a real estate sign, whether it's a garage sale sign, whether it's a nonprofit having an event, basically what we're proposing is that as long as the sign does not exceed 6 square feet per side, and it's not any more than 4 feet in height, freestanding, or 6 feet high if it's wall mounted, and it can't be illuminated. So that's how we would treat all non-commercial signs. And so that is to come into compliance with the Supreme Court decision. And then a new category, this really came at the behest of the Development Review Board, is just what we call distinctive signs. And I have a picture of the lot and dry cleaning sign because that is a sign that would not be allowed under our current regulations. It sits too high up on the building. Probably sign size is probably okay, but the fact that it protrudes over the building roof line would be a problem. And what the DRB really wanted to encourage, they wanted a tool that would allow, something that was different, that still had good quality design, but could potentially be an iconic sign, like some felt that the lot and dry cleaner sign was. So the proposed language that the Planning Commission came up with has some review criteria, but basically it allows a special application process that the Development Review Board can consider these distinctive and high quality design, signs that actually add to our built environment. There's a problem with my slide, and I apologize here. Under campgrounds, we currently do not allow camping between November 1st and March 31st. This slide should actually have a strikeout in the first standard here. We want to allow year-round camping in campgrounds. Obviously, there needs to be a method of water supply and wastewater that can handle that. So the proposal here is to strike out number 1 and add this one down here. I apologize for the error on the slide. Single room occupancies have some special standards, and in reviewing them, the Planning Commission felt that they were too prescriptive and it made it difficult and probably expensive to create a single room occupancy. So there were standards of having a certain amount of common space on each floor, which here is at least 200 square feet in area or 4 square feet per unit. There had to be a certain number of, there had to be laundry on each floor. And we felt like some of the standards really weren't sized to the buildings that we have in Brattleboro. They seemed excessive and would make it expensive to build. And again, under the thinking that we need housing, we need different types of housing that are affordable to everybody. We still wanted to make sure that there were laundry facilities there and that there were kitchen facilities, but it seemed like they were too excessive. So some proposed amendments there. And then we wanted to clarify, we had the standards for attached housing, which I have a picture of attached housing on Balger Street. And we haven't had any attached housing developed since we've had these land use regulations in place, but there was a feeling that there was some confusion of how it would be implemented. So we really wanted to be clear on how the minimum lot size would apply, how setbacks would apply. And in this case, the side setback would only apply to the bulk of the attached housing. No, we were just clarifying that it's not each unit. And then also for attached housing, we wanted to be clear about how how attached garages could be. The current regulations say that you have to have the garages 16 feet behind the building front line. And we thought that seemed excessive and wouldn't allow the image that you see on the top where you have the garage, and then maybe the living unit above it. So what we did say is that it should be at or behind the building front line. And the image I put on the bottom is examples of what we call in planning snout houses. So this is what we're trying to avoid by having a standard like this in the first place, where the garage protrudes out, and that's kind of what you feel from the street. It kind of takes away from the, what it feels like on the street, and you're kind of faced with more utilitarian aspects rather than having seeing the front of the building and maybe having a porch and promoting that kind of public space. Also, in this third part of the regulations, we've relaxed design requirements in the cottage cluster planned unit development. So we have standards that currently that regulate the pitch of the roof, the number of units, and we just, again, we felt it was a little excessive on the design standards, and it was being prohibitive in how we could use it. We've had people approach the planning department wanting to do a tiny house, cluster, and where we would look to this type of planned unit development, it just wasn't working. So we're hoping that by relaxing some, maybe it'll be a tool that can be used more. As an accessory use, we allow sheds to have a maximum footprint of 200 square feet to be located closer to property lines than maybe a house would be. We wanted to expand this. Sometimes people want to have a workshop or a studio. It's not a shed. It's still a small structure. It's not being used for human habitation. So we wanted to open that up to other uses as an accessory structure to have that relaxed setback. Inns currently have a requirement that the parking can't be located between the building and the street. And well, that makes sense in some of our more, in our denser districts. In the rural and the rural residential parts of town, it's not uncommon for a building to be set back, quite far from the street, and the parking can be appropriately screened. So we thought that we didn't need this standard and we'd be better off just going with the parking standards that are within each zoning district. A minor but not insignificant change is we have parking standards for mini storage. Right now, it's based on the square footage of the mini storage, and it's way too much. One of our mini storage facilities out on Old Ferry Road would require 99 parking spaces the way it's written, and that was never the intent. So the new standard that we're proposing is 4 parking spaces plus 2 if there's a manager's quarters. And mini storage often has a lot of parking and paved areas, so we think that this is sufficient. People are really there to unload and load up their things, not really to park. So we don't need a lot of parking. And then another change that we're proposing is to allow retaining walls greater than 16 feet in the industrial zoning district. We have a maximum height of 16 feet for retaining walls throughout town. And the idea is that we really want development to kind of be sited with the physical conditions of the property. We don't want to have excessive cut and fill. However, when we did these land use regulations, we added some land to the industrial zoning district that is quite steep. And so that's an area where there often is cut and fill. And so we ran into a couple applications where it was actually really difficult to come into compliance with the regulations. And so if we want development in that zoning district, we've said it's industrial. So this is just something that we felt we needed to loosen up for that zoning district. And then there's 2 areas where we feel we're tightening up the regulations a little bit. One has to do, actually there's 3, not 2. The first one has to do with parking lot and when parking lots are repaved or regraded and restriped. So we want to require a permit for that. It's a good opportunity to deal with stormwater issues on site. There's a lot of large commercial properties that have been, redone, and not only redone and just, putting a top layer of pavement over it, but where they put in some landscaped islands. And so we would like to require a permit for that so that we can gain compliance in other areas. So, if they're resurfacing a parking lot, if they're restriping it and they're changing the configuration of the striping, if they're regrading, if they're modifying it in any way, they would need a permit. Stormwater management. So we currently have an exemption that if a commercial property is meeting either one of these exempt development standards that you see stricken out in red. So it's if they're not increasing the amount of impervious surface on a lot, then they are exempt from our stormwater requirements. And what we've found over the last 5.5 years is that most of the redevelopment we've seen fall into one of these exemptions because there's a lot of impervious surface on site. And when you developed in the 80s and even in the 90s, the way of managing stormwater was to get it off site as quickly as possible and into the town system. The standards that we have now require you to kind of treat as much of it on site as you can, hopefully let it get into the ground, have less pavement, maybe more areas of landscaping or lawn using low impact development standards. And so we just feel like stormwater is an area where anything we can do to bring it into compliance with our regulations, which are more up to date, is an important thing to do. So we'd like to propose to get rid of these exemptions. And anytime a property is going through major site plan, they're going to need to bring their stormwater into compliance. And then the last area that we think we're tightening up the regulations is we have a sign exemption. So if you have a non-conforming sign and you're changing it, but you're changing it because there's been you had been in a franchise and now you're not in a franchise, you were able to make that sign change and not have to come into compliance. We think that non-conformities, anytime if the sign is being changed and it's a non-conforming sign, that's the perfect opportunity to bring it into compliance. So we'd like to propose that be removed. And then finally, the last one to point out is in part 4 of our regulations, which deal with the administrative procedures. It's where we list the review criteria for site plan review, conditional use, Act 250. There's a long list, a big chart. Right now, energy conservation is only reviewed under conditional use. And so we'd like to use that review standard during regular site plan review as well. So that is an overview of the proposed amendments. I know there's a lot in there, and so we're happy to take questions or however you want to proceed, Liz.
Thank you, Sue. Well, I'll just make a few comments because I think it's great. And, it just shows that the planning process is working properly, that, however much longer after the new town planning and zoning regulations are adopted, there is, in the natural course of things, some amendments that need to be made. And, these are all the categories that you would expect, some legal changes at the state, some things that the Development Review Board would want, some things that town staff and the Planning Commission would want, and just items that make the process more inclusive and allow for, housing for all types of housing and all incomes and so forth of people. So I applaud you and your staff and the Planning Commission for identifying these. And of course, I think they're wonderful. So anyone else want to make some comments?
Oh.
Ian?
Thank you, Sue, so much for the great presentation. Very, very helpful. I had just one quick question. On the residential neighborhood zoning for the 3, 4, and 5 apartment, no longer needs to be a conditional use permit for existing, but now new 5 apartment buildings will need to be a conditional use permit. So if I had like a 4 unit, but I could turn it into a 5 unit, is that a new 5 unit and needs to have a conditional use permit, or is that an existing so it doesn't?
That's an existing structure, so it wouldn't need conditional use review. It's only if it's like a complete new build of a
just
structure.
Absolutely a new house or something. And okay, cool. Thank you.
And so you've had success with that temporary ordinance in terms of having new housing units brought to Brattleboro, correct?
We have, and it's, I think in the first 6 months, the Department of Housing and Community Development did an article on our interim bylaw. Actually, I'll have to get it to each of you. It's actually, it's quite nice. But I think we had about 22 new housing units that maybe wouldn't have been allowed under the existing zoning that were created as a result of the interim bylaw in the first 6 months. So from September to the end of January. And so that's great. I think that some of it also came about because of the Vermont Rehousing Recovery program, which was CARES funded, which made $30,000 grants available to property owners to do this, to make units. and rehab units. So we're hopeful that that program is going to be continuing. I think there was going to be some action in the legislature this week. So if you're a landlord and you're interested in creating units, keep an eye out for that one.
Thank you. Tim, did you want to comment?
Yeah, just a couple things quickly. I have to go on the record and say that I really hate those vertical blade signs, but I don't think it's proper to impose my annoyance on.
Some people
anyone.
really like them.
I guess so, especially in Florida, I noticed. But speaking of things I don't like, is I'm not a big fan of the tiny home thing. I think it's cute and I think it's quaint, etc. But this cottage cluster changes that you're proposing, I'm just curious if where those were, the folks that came to the planning department wanting to look into those, they're not downtown, right? They're
No, in different parts of the town. So one was in West Brattleboro Village, one was in the rural residential. The cottage cluster wouldn't be allowed in the rural. Let me just double check that before I say that. I think the cottage cluster.
While you're looking, I'll just explain that I think obviously there'd be places where that would be more appropriate than others. So I was just curious where the past history lay.
Yeah, so the two areas that cottage cluster developments would be allowed are in the residential neighborhood and the rural residential district. So the issues of why they couldn't be used were more about
Uniformity.
Yep. So when we see them, when we try to make use of it, it's like there's existing structures on the property and they want to add some more. But it's a uniformity thing. And then it's also the design standards, it has to have, it can't be more than 1.5 stories tall. So it's
okay.
Footprint sizes, it's all that. It's just not working. And I would also say that this is, these are some changes that we're proposing right now. I think that there'll be another slate in a year or so, particularly related to housing after the housing study is done. And
yeah, absolutely. And I want to circle back and just offer my appreciation for all the work you're doing around this and for the Planning Commission and DRB, but also Sue personally, your work you did for the Tri-Park efforts and restructuring. And I think my last question is sort of a bigger picture dreaming and maybe for the next round, but I really recently went to visit some folks in Keene who live in these really nice, large apartment complexes. There's like speaking of a cluster, there's like a cluster of 5 of them and they each have 24 units. That's my dream for Brattleboro and doing everything the town can to encourage that kind of development. Obviously, there's site limitations and all that, but I'm thinking, Putney Road, and I'm thinking with the new Putney Road master plan, what a great place to have to stack up some great apartment dwellings there. What else can we do to encourage that to happen? And I'm sure that's already in your mind, but.
So I've had conversations in the past with Chris Campany from Wyndham Regional Commission, and it's coming up more and more, is that we need kind of a lookbook, a kind of understanding of, how maybe Putney Road could be developed. There is the old Putney Road master plan, which has some of that. But in addition to kind of an apartment complex, it could just be, garden style apartments or how can you, infill missing middle housing. So we've been talking a little bit in the office about, maybe we need to have some sort of pattern book that people can begin to visualize what it would look like.
There is a surprising amount of housing in beyond Putney Road that houses a lot of our fellow residents.
Mhm. It sounds like sort of a visioning step that comes after the housing study, gives us some good data.
I think so.
All right, that's all I have.
Anyone else from the select board would like to comment? Yes, Jessica.
I just want to say thank you so much, Sue. I'm so excited about having been part of the process of developing this with you and with the commission and with the other staff. It's just such a delight to see, again, the planning process come to fruition and us being able to make these changes. So if I was hearing and reading correctly, here's a question. It seems like these changes will make rooming and boarding houses, single room occupancy, dwelling spaces, attached housing like condo developments, tiny house or cottage cluster developments, all easier to build in Brattleboro.
Yes, we think so.
Okay. And that's the way that planning, zoning, and these regulations can impact housing availability and affordability in Brattleboro?
Yes. From the regulatory side. Yes.
Great. Awesome. And it's really exciting to hear that the interim zoning piece made those 22 new units actually happen. So it does, like, making these regulatory changes actually does result in actual more housing being available. Another great point that I saw in your presentation. I did wonder why the line was drawn around the 5-unit conditional. You know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just explain
Yeah.
how you decided to draw that line and why?
Yep, that's a good question, and I'm trying to recall from last summer why we did. I think because I do think that there's enough other controls that would govern how a building fits into a neighborhood. Boy, off the top of my head, I can't really think. I think it could have been the parking, just a change, making sure that there is a wide variety in the residential neighborhood, right? So there is the kind of core neighborhoods that surround the downtown, and then there's the more subdivisions that are out in West Brattleboro, like Carriage Hill. And so you could see how a 5-unit building, could be really different out in a neighborhood of single family, which isn't to say that it shouldn't be there, but just that this additional level of review might help make it fit best in the neighborhood. There's just a wide variety in the residential neighborhoods of development pattern. So.
And one more question. Could you explain why you're making parking lots harder to build? What does that do for the community, for the landscape, what is it that's driving that choice?
Yeah, Tom's up, but Tom, if you want to jump in, otherwise I can field it. I don't want to allow other planning commissioners, but I'm happy to field it if you want me to.
Tom.
Yeah, well, Sue, if you can field the first part, and then I'll say about why we moved it to conditional, because originally it was going to be removed, wasn't it? But then I think, Jess, you were actually still a planning commissioner at that meeting, and you said, well, wait, let's make it conditional, so that way there can be, because it's parking lots and parking structures, and if we still allow those as a group, then under conditional review, then, and if our overall goal is to reduce surface area of parking, then a review could allow for a parking structure to be an option, which stacks parking spaces and results in less surface area. But as far as the actual background for the initial change, I'll let Sue field that.
Yeah, so, parking lots are a really low value land use. They don't, there's nothing taxable there. It's just, wide expanse of pavement that then causes stormwater issues. And they kind of take away from the vitality of an area when it could be housing or commercial or office or some other productive use that contributes more to the town. So if you think about it in our downtown, actually, there's parking lots, but they were either pre-existing private parking lots or they're owned by the municipality, so that we're not building new parking lots because we'd rather have the street be more active. So the thought was we just don't want it, a commuter lot that's useful. There is one up on Brown Court, but we don't want a proliferation of just, wide parking lots or parking garages for no reason on Putney Road.
I think Joni Mitchell said it best.
I just have to jump in. I really love the answers because also we really have to challenge. There's been historically just sort of this obsession with parking. People are actually, frankly, still obsessed with parking, even though we just got done with a parking study that told us our parking in our town is entirely adequate, and that if you have to walk a few extra steps, especially if you're able-bodied in our town, it's not going to damage the downtown. So I think flipping that a little bit is a progressive thing to do, and really recognize that not everybody has cars, and cars aren't the only important thing that we need to be thinking about. So,
especially with compared to natural areas as the alternative. Ian.
Oh, Tom wanted to say something.
Oh,
Yes,
thanks.
Tom.
If you're going to talk about parking, Ian, go right ahead. I was going to jump in about a different topic slightly.
I was not going to talk about parking.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, when we were talking about the interim zoning bylaw, it's my understanding that the kind of spark that, or one of the sparks that lit that in us, was actually a Brattleboro landlord who came to planning staff and said, hey, I've got opportunity for all this money to develop more units, but I'm running up against complications in the land use regs. So I would just invite all folks and the public who's listening to not be, I'm not saying anyone is, but don't be afraid of the land use regs and delve right in. And it's common language, although, it's 200 or 300 pages of it, but you can control F, whatever keyword you want, and see if your dream or ambition is possible, and then run it by us, and we'll see how we can, accommodate within the values and goals that the town has.
Great. I like
That's
that.
it.
Yes, Ian.
Yeah, I just had one other thing, Sue, I wanted to bring up. One of the goals that we set this year on the board is the creation of the stormwater utility. And I just wanted to just maybe hear you speak a little bit to the changes that you're making to the stormwater regulations. Is it going to impact that at all? Is it not really going to have any effect on it? Could it maybe make it easier?
I think, if we do a stormwater utility that assesses a rate based on impervious surface, which most that I've seen do, having, as a property is redeveloped, having it, maybe create more pervious surfaces on site could affect, what somebody may pay into the system in the future. So I think that's a positive thing. But it is a cost that, as a property gets redeveloped, that somebody's gonna, you're gonna pay it one way or another.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
So there's another member of the Planning Commission here, Dan Handy. Dan, would you like to comment at all?
I appreciate the opportunity, but I don't think I have anything to add. Sue and Jessica and Tom have covered lots of ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for your work.
So what's left, Sue? When is our next public hearing?
So the next public hearing is July 6th at your select board meeting. And
In
then
person?
after that,
Yeah.
yeah, and then after that, you can choose to close the public hearing. You can vote that night. You can, send it back to the planning commission. You can make some tweaks yourself.
Great.
So that would be the next step.
Danielle has a comment, and then we'll also see if other members of the public have comments.
Well, that's kind of my comment, right?
Okay.
So this is a public hearing. And so if the public want to be heard on these matters, they need to attend. And presumably after tonight's, presentation, they will know a little bit more about what's in it. Not everybody reads our backup material. So thanks to the press for reporting on the salient matters here. And if you have, any thoughts about it, now is the time to speak up. Because, this is a process that happens with the public, right? It is not just done to them. So they need to show up and speak up.
Well, so consistent with Daniel's comments, are there members of the public now who would like to speak on this issue? Jessica Laflamme.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just had a question about so currently one dwelling is per 1.5 acres. Correct me if I'm wrong. I was wondering how that would impact a low impact residential setting.
So Liz, would you like me to
Please, Sue.
answer that? So we have a different minimum lot size depending on the zoning district.
Okay.
So in the rural residential zoning district, it is 1.5 acres is the minimum lot size. So you can have a 1 or a 2 family dwelling on 1.5 acres. So that would remain the case. There's not a change proposed to that, and the density that we were talking about, getting rid of the density standard, the residential density standard, wouldn't apply to the rural residential zoning district. And that the reason that we're not proposing that is that these are areas that are not water and sewered, and they're not, we want to maximize the use of the town system and allow for denser development to be in those other zoning districts that are served by water and sewer, and in a lot of cases sidewalks. So it would likely make housing more expensive to develop in the rural residential, but there are other ways that you could subdivide the property and kind of cluster the housing to reduce expenses like that.
Okay, Jessica, thank you very much. I can't, okay, very good. Anyone else from the public like to speak about this planning amendment public hearing? All right, hearing none and no other select board members or planning commission members would like to speak, we can close this public hearing soon. Well, thank you very much. And I know Sue's on tap for the next item, but we need to take our 8 o'clock break. And so let's come back at 8:15. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Sue, for this opportunity to talk about the website community engagement project. Take it away.
Thanks. So what I'm here before you tonight with is the proposal that we have for the website community engagement process. So as you'll recall, at representative town meeting, there was $75,000 appropriated for upgrades to the town website and improved community engagement. And there was a motion that directed town staff to create, for your approval, a detailed RFP for the new website after soliciting input from community members, especially those who have experienced difficulty accessing town information and those who have lived experience with social services, racism, sexism, classism, and homelessness. And so what I'm sharing with you tonight is the proposed inclusive process that we'd like to use to inform the request for proposal that will go out for the reconstruction of the town's website. So the first step would be, we want to review what the current website is. We want to get a hold of the analytics that the current web host has. Not really sure what that is yet, but we're hoping that we can review data based on usage and content. And so the usage data would include who is using the site, where they're from, what they're looking for, and how long they stay on the website. And then the content data would include what pages are visited the most and what searches are conducted using the search bar. And so we want to take a look at that information, and that's just one piece of the story. Obviously, we need to kind of engage with the community and then also with town employees. So the actual engagement piece would be two parts. There's internal engagement with town staff, and then there's the external with the community members. So for internal stakeholder engagement, I'm proposing, first of all, I just want to point out that staff are important users of the website, and we also manage the website. With open meeting law and all other requirements, we're constantly uploading information and, providing links to it. So we need to make sure that whatever website is created meets the needs of staff and is also manageable for us. So I'm proposing that we'll be conducting interviews with each town department to figure out their needs. How is the website that we currently have meeting it? What would they like to see? And then also have a focus group, or maybe more if we need to, with the people that are actually managing the site and uploading content to understand, from their end, what's working, what's not working. What do we need to be looking at? So how functional is it? And then figuring out the ongoing management of it. For external stakeholder engagement, obviously, the website is there to inform and assist the public. So understanding what their needs are out of the website is essential. And so proposing kind of three aspects to the external stakeholder engagement. The first would be a survey. We want it to be brief, probably no more than 10 questions that we would have out there in a web-based format, also hard copies. And just to get a better understanding of what people view as useful information on the town website, and how are they using it? Is it on a mobile device? Is it on a computer? In my mind, any website is going to have to be better at being able to be viewed on a mobile device. I think that's how a lot of people use them now, but we want to know what people are using to access it. And what would they find useful on the town website? We'll also do stakeholder interviews. And so this is where we're really get at the community organizations and people who have marginalized identities. It could be the BIPOC community, the LGBTQIA, persons with disabilities, persons in poverty, seniors, kind of getting out there and doing some inclusive community engagement with them, finding out what their needs are. And, you know, I wrote in the memo that we're going to do it that's in line with CDC and state regulations. Obviously, those are changing daily, but we'll keep up on them and do that engagement in appropriate ways. And then we'll also do focus groups, again, 2 to 3 focus groups with a maximum participation of 8 to 10 per group. And these are going to be geared towards people who have experience with the current website and, you know, maybe a little bit more techy, you know, what understanding, you know, people that have direct knowledge of our website and the content, and getting their feedback on what would be useful for the new website. And then we plan to, you know, do the focus groups by either word of mouth or advertising, a combination of both, to get volunteers to sit in a focus group. And then we'll pull all this information together, the analytics, the internal and external engagement. You know, we'll put it together in a document with some findings and identify themes that we get from the public input. And then from there, we'll begin drafting the request for proposal for select board review. And I'm anticipating that it's going to take the summer months to complete this work, and then hopefully have an RFP to you by the fall. So that is the proposal for kind of the inclusive community engagement that we'll use to draft the RFP. I'm pretty excited about it. I think doing this stuff up front is going to be useful for the RFP and also for the project moving forward.
Great, thank you, Sue. Let's begin with Ian.
Sue, thank you so much for putting this plan together. I think it really captures both the direction that we received from the representative town meeting and also some of the discussions that we've had on the website up to this point. Something that I've definitely learned from the time that I've been on the board is that when we're looking at reevaluating or changing something that impacts a lot of community members, it makes sense to spend the time up front to talk to all the stakeholders and do the work to really get it started in the right place and get those ideas moving now. And so, yeah, I think 3 months maybe seems like a little bit of a long time for getting the RFP together, but I think reading through what the plan is, it makes perfect sense. And I'm excited about what's going to be generated from that work and all of those different people that are going to be part of the process. Because we're investing in something here. The idea is that we're going to hopefully have the public face of the town of Brattleboro online, something that hopefully will last a long time and be really accessible and usable for all sorts of different people. So I think it's great.
Thank you.
I don't know who was first. So Jessica?
Jessica.
Okay. Hey, Sue, this looks like a really great process. I'm curious, what is it that you're hoping to get out of it? Like what sort of questions are you looking to have answered, or what sort of directions are you hoping to receive? And is this going to be these are the questions we know need to get answered, or is this going to be more of a creative or generative process for the community to bring ideas?
I think it's the latter. I want to know how people, you know, what do they want from the website? What do they want to be able to do on the website? I think it's important to look at how it's used now to kind of keep that going, and it'll probably, you know, the search might generate, you know, how do we need to better organize information to make it more accessible. But I also think knowing, you know, I've seen from some other website processes, you know, the community has ideas of what should be on the website that, you know, we might not think as the municipal government is necessarily, you know, needs to be on there, but if the community is looking for it, then, we want to know that. So I think I don't have a preconceived necessarily notion of what we should be asking. Obviously we'll put the questions together. But how would people use the website? How do they use it? And what are they having trouble accessing? Some of the things that we'll be asking.
Great. I'm going to just jump in.
Please.
Thanks. What was I going to say? Oh, geez. So in the internal stakeholders, I wonder if I could be so arrogant as to ask that the select board be considered as an internal stakeholder. I'm forever referring people to different parts of the website and forever dealing with the website myself. And so I have 2.5 years of experience in that. And then just a request really, when doing the survey, you mentioned that you were going to, ask how people engage with the site, what kind of, whether they're using a desktop, laptop, or a mobile device or something. Could you also drill down into like the particular kind of, what is the word? Mac, PC, or something else? Because like the one piece of the website that is so clunky that gets so many, comments is this Excel document where people can put in their street to find their recycling and trash day. And it only really works if you use a PC.
Yeah.
And
That's
not
very
everybody does.
true.
I did not know that. So see.
Yeah, believe me. That's why I want to be, at least that's one reason why I'd like the select board to be an internal stakeholder, because I'm sure we field a lot of comments.
Great.
That is it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And thank you for the process. I think it's very well thought out.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Oh, just very happy with
All right.
what you presented.
Anyone from the public who wishes to comment on the process that Sue's identified? Hearing none. I guess we'll just thank you very much for all your work, especially this evening, and note that no motion is required. It's just the information that you need to go forward. You have it now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sue, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
All right. Our last item is to have a discussion about FY22 committee and board vacancies. And we have a long slate of people. We will need to take a separate vote for the traffic safety committee. But we do have a concern about the Citizen Police Communication Committee applicants. Yes, Ian, would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, I'd like to have a vote on it because I plan on recusing myself from the vote for a conflict of interest.
Okay, very good. And also, I would just like to mention that it's been brought to the board's attention that Mr. Rivard does not actually live in Brattleboro. So there has been a concern that this coveted position be reserved for Brattleboro residents. And I wondered how the board felt about that notion. I see heads nodding.
I'm in agreement on that one.
I think then that we should, if we pull that out and vote on those two members that are Brattleboro residents, and then we can have a traffic safety committee vote, then that will leave us to have an overall slate of all the remaining appointments. All right, how do I like that? Good. Let's start then with the Citizen Police Communications Committee. Gary Stroud and Bruce Sweeter are applicants. And we should vote for them. Peter, please help me.
Your process.
We got to write this down sometime.
In the rules of procedure would be that at this moment you'd call for nominations, whether anyone chooses to nominate any of the folks who have applied for this position.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim,
I would nominate Bruce Sweeter.
thank you. Anyone else like to nominate anyone else? Daniel,
I rather unsurprisingly will nominate Gary Stroud.
thank you very much. All right. All in favor of Gary Stroud and Bruce Streeter to be appointed to the Citizen Police Communications Committee?
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt.
What did I do now?
So sorry. So you should call for each one individually. Ask for how many vote yes for Gary, and then how many vote yes for Bruce, and then you'll do that also on the other one when you're where you actually have a vote to take rather than a slate to approve.
Thank you.
Sure.
See, at the next meeting, you can just elbow me.
Very good.
Or slip you a note.
There you go. Okay, all in favor of Gary Stroud being appointed to the Citizen Police Communications Committee, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, that has passed 5-4-0. And all in favor of Bruce Sweeter being appointed to the Citizen Police Communications Committee, please raise your hand and say aye.
All right.
And again, that's 4-0 with Ian abstaining. Now, down to the Traffic Safety Committee. Would open for nominations for that post as well. Daniel?
I nominate Ricky Rosati.
Thank you. Ricky Rosati has been nominated. All in favor of that nomination, please raise your hand and say aye.
Do we take multiple nominations first?
I think you want both nominations.
And I'm sorry, my internet froze there and I didn't hear what you were saying, but you will want to take nominations.
Very good. All right. Is there another nomination? Yes, Jessica.
I nominate Louise Zach.
Very good. Okay, now. I seem to have a really difficult time with this. All in favor of Ricky Rosati to be appointed to the Traffic Safety Committee, please raise your hand and say aye. Okay. All in favor of Louise Zach being appointed to the Traffic Safety Committee, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay, Louise Zach has been appointed. Thank you. And now there is a slate. Yes. Oh, thank you, Peter.
Because it's a slate, and so for the public's benefit, I'd like to explain what we mean by that. So in each of these other two situations, there was a point of complexity. In one case, 2 candidates for 1 position. In the other case, the applicant from out of town, that caused the select board to take them individually. For all of the remaining offices that will be filled this evening, there are only as many applicants as there are available seats, or in fact, fewer applicants than available seats. And so the select board can, if it chooses, and has indicated that it does choose, to approve these appointments all as one motion. I think it'll be helpful to you, and so I will now volunteer to read that slate, read the names of the individuals and the positions to which they have applied to be appointed, so that you can, when I'm finished, simply move the approval of the slate and then vote it. Okay?
Excellent. Thank you, Peter.
And you've frozen again, so I'm going to turn off my camera again. Sorry.
We do still hear you.
I hope you're hearing me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait just a moment. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. So for the Agricultural Advisory Board, Gary Stroud and Drew Adam. For Brattleboro Housing Partnerships Board of Commissioners, Janet Kramer. For the Conservation Commission, Eric Furman. For the Design Review Committee, Maya Hasagawa. For the Design Review Committee in the alternate position, Nora Dissinger. Development Review Board, Maya Hasagawa and Daniel Handy. Development Review Board alternate position, Gary Stroud. To the Energy Committee, Millicent Cooley. The Select Board representative on the Hazard Mitigation Committee, Ian Goodnow. For the Honor Roll Committee, Richard Campbell and Dave Wright. To the Planning Commission, Gary Stroud and Doran Ham. To the Recreation and Parks Board, Jessica Gould. The town's representative as a trustee on the Rescue Inc. board, Deborah Miller Chapman. And representing the town on the Senior Solutions Advisory Council, Donna Jacobs. As weighers of coal, Ryan Stratton and David Levenbach. As collector of taxes by charter and statute, that's the town manager, so Peter Elwell. Acting zoning administrator, Sue Fillion. And road commissioner, Steve Barrett, director of public works. And Sue Fillion, of course, is our planning services director.
Peter, I just have one question based on while I was following along. The Planning Commission has two different terms associated with it. Do you know which term we're talking about for these two individuals?
So normally, it doesn't have to be this way. You could specify something different, but normally you would give preference to those who are here, basically, right? So there's a shorter term that is to fill an unexpired term of someone who resigned. And then there's two full terms available. So the two people who have presented themselves to you this evening normally would be placed in the full terms. And the shorter remaining time on the unexpired term would be the one that would remain vacant at this time until another applicant comes
Well,
forward.
that sounds fair. Okay, so are we ready then to, yes, Jessica?
I had a question about the Energy Committee. In the notes that we have under Energy Committee, it says there are 5 total vacancies, but in the column of number of vacancies, it says 1. I'm just wondering which one is correct. And if it's 5 total vacancies and we only have 1 person applying, does that then mean that the Energy Committee is not able to have a quorum and unable to meet?
That is what that means at this time. Until
So-
there are more applicants, correct. Which does not prevent you from making that appointment this evening, but it does mean that she and the other continuing members are not able to meet until there's an additional member appointed. In addition to that, I've received a very helpful text from a teammate that I skipped over one. So the slate I read is incomplete. I want to add to the slate that I read one more appointment to the Traffic Safety Committee. I inadvertently skipped over that because you had acted upon traffic safety, but what you acted on was the citizen member. There is also a school representative member with a position that will become vacant unless you make this appointment this evening. And Alice Sharks has served in that position for the last few years, and the school district is asking that she be appointed again to serve on behalf of the school district on the Traffic Safety Committee.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next step is, yes, Jessica?
I move that we approve the slate of committee and board members that Peter just read off to us.
Wonderful. Jessica has made a motion to move the slate as Peter Elwell has presented. All select board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 I don't see Ian.
Hey, Liz.
We see him.
Okay, very good. All right, that has passed. Oh, there you are. All right. I assume you voted in the affirmative, Ian.
I did.
Okay. Yeah, Tim, did you have a comment?
I had another motion.
Okay. That motion has carried 5-0, and Tim has one further motion to make.
I move to adjourn. Sorry, I have a screaming child that I hear.
All right. Well, we can't hear, so all in favor to adjourn, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you all very much. See
Good
you in
night.
person. Or
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
great. Good night.
Buy some pants.